The morning sun rose over Maple City like a pale, watery eye struggling to pierce the morning mist. For me, it was the first sunrise I'd seen in this new world that actually felt like a beginning rather than an end. I stood at the window of my chambers, watching the city stir to life below. Merchants were already setting up their stalls. Laborers trudged toward the docks, and in the distance, the great slave market of Maple City was beginning its daily business. This is where it starts. This is where I build my army. Alina entered quietly, carrying a tray of bread and watered wine. She'd barely slept, too anxious about what the day would bring. But when she saw the calm determination on my face, her fears eased, just a little. "My lord, the guards outside say the market opens at dawn. They've been watching us. I think they're expecting us to carry more than we were ordered to carry." As we spoke, the accountant requested to come in. After I signaled him in, he brought out the 1,500 gold coins and handed them to me and told me the 4 slaves were outside my door awaiting my orders. I thanked him as he left. After a few seconds, the system notification flickered in my face, updating me. But I had something they didn't, a system that turned investment into gold. Every coin I spent on my domain would be doubled at the end of the month. Every slave I bought, every tool I purchased, every seed I planted would compound. It was a cheat code in a world that didn't know such things existed. They think they're sending me to die. They don't realize they're funding my dreams. Before I left for the slave market, Elena brought a small chest to me and told me that my mother gave it to her hours before she died, making her promise to only give it to me when situations looked hopeless. I took the chest with shaking hands and opened it with tears in my eyes as memories of the old William's mother flashed in my mind. Inside was a piece of folded parchment, a necklace with a wolf pendant, and a pouch. I opened the parchment first. In a delicate, fading hand, I read my mother's words. "William, be strong and be very courageous. I love you, always." I picked up the necklace and wore it around my neck. The wolf pendant felt warm against my chest, as if it had been waiting for me. Finally, I picked up the pouch and opened it. Inside were gold coins. I was shocked. Before I could count them, the system flashed in my face. Previous assets, the 600 gold coins, 4 servants, 1 dedicated maiden, Alina gained. 700 gold coins, mother's hidden inheritance, a current total, were 5,200 gold coins. I was so grateful for this gift and thanked Elena for being faithful to her promise. "How did my mother know?" Alina shook her head. "She said she always knew you would need it one day. She said you were destined for greatness. But she never explained what that meant." I looked at the wolf pendant around my neck and wondered, what was its significance? Was it just a keepsake, or did it hold deeper meaning? I tucked the thought away for later, one mystery at a time. First, I need to build my army. The slave market of Maple City was a place of desperate commerce. Iron cages lined the main square, their occupants huddled together for warmth against the morning chill. Merchants in fine linen robes prowled the aisles, examining the goods with the cold, appraising eyes of cattle buyers. I walked through the market with Elena at my side, my silver hair and blue eyes drawing immediate attention. A noble in the slave market was nothing unusual. Nobles and merchants were the primary buyers of slaves in the empire. But I was different. I was young. I was dressed simply, and my eyes were scanning the cages with an intensity that spoke of purpose. Focused, looking beyond the obvious. The system shows me what others miss. The ledger's eye flickered to life in my mind's eye, overlaying the market with color-coded markers. Most of the slaves were tagged with dull gray markers, ordinary laborers, useful but unremarkable. But here and there, bright points of light appeared, and my heart quickened. Yes, there, the girl in the corner cage. She's glowing like a star. I made my way to the cage, gliding through the crowd of potential buyers. The slave inside was young, perhaps 18, with tangled hair and hollow cheeks. Her clothes were rags. Her wrists were raw from iron shackles, but her eyes were fierce, defiant, unbroken. "Interesting choice, my lord." "That one's been difficult," bit the last buyer who tried to examine her. The slaver was a weasel-faced man with a nose like a rat's snout and a smile like a knife wound. He'd seen my interest and was already calculating how much he could extract. "She's a fighter." "Most buyers don't want that. They want them broken." I turned and gave her a deep stare. She quickly hid her face between her hands. "How much?" "She's a rare piece, my lord." "Strong, healthy?" "Plenty of fight left." "Normally I'd ask 50 gold, but for you." 10 gold pieces. The slaver's face twisted in outrage. 10 gold? That's insulting. She's worth at least. You just told me she's difficult. Bites buyers. Doesn't work well with others. No one wants a slave they can't control. I'm taking a risk on her. 10 gold, and I take her off your hands. The slaver opened his mouth to argue, then saw the cold, unyielding look in my eyes. This wasn't a noble who could be bargained with. This was a man who'd already made up his mind. "Fine, 10 gold, but I'm not throwing in any extras." I don't need extras, I need results. The transaction was swift. I handed over the coin, and the shackles were unlocked. The girl stumbled forward, rubbing her raw wrists, looking at me with a mixture of suspicion and reluctant curiosity. Why? Why did you choose me? Because I see that you have potential. Infinite potential, and I'm going to help you reach it. I turned to Elena. Take her to the bathhouse. Get her cleaned up, buy her proper clothes, and feed her. Elena hesitated, her eyes darting between me and the suspicious girl. My lord, is that wise? She's still a slave. She could. She's not a slave, Elena. She's a future soldier. Treat her like one. The next few hours were a blur of activity. I moved through the slave market like a chess master, acquiring piece after piece for my army. The ledger's eye guided me to hidden gems, slaves who'd been overlooked by other buyers because they were too troublesome or injured. James was a 40-year-old soldier who'd been cast out of the Imperial Army for speaking his mind. He was broad-shouldered, grim-faced, and radiated a quiet competence that I immediately recognized. He'd been passed over for promotions, given the worst assignments, and left to rot in obscurity because he refused to bow to corrupt superiors. Vince was a thin, bespectacled man who'd once been the chief financial advisor to the Duke of Silver City. He'd been framed for embezzlement by a rival and sold into slavery to silence him. His hands were still ink-stained from years of ledger work, and his eyes still held the sharp, calculating gleam of a man who understood numbers. Borg was a management expert who'd been imprisoned for refusing to falsify records for his noble employer. He was meticulous, detail-oriented, and completely unflappable. He looked like a man who'd accepted his fate and was simply waiting for the end. Ingid was a carpenter with a limp, injured in a construction accident, and discarded by his former employer. He was skeptical when I approached him, convinced that his injury made him useless. Ferris was a demoted quartermaster who'd been blamed for a logistics failure that wasn't his fault. He knew every supply route in the Empire, every merchant's weakness, every way to move men and materials efficiently. By midday, my party had grown dramatically. I'd purchased 1,000 slaves, most of them laborers and craftsmen. I'd secured 20 horses, 20 cattle, and enough grain and supplies to last 3 months. I'd also bought seeds for planting, hoping to cultivate the cursed land once it was purified. From the spiritual center, I purchased 12 magical gemstones. Through the help of the system, I could craft simple purification artifacts that purify the air and the land. The power of the artifact and the radius it covered depended on the size of the gem. Expenses: 260 gold, 1,000 slaves, 95,000 silver, 950 gold, 20 horses, 500 gold, 20 cattle, 300 gold, 300 bags of grain, 15,000 silver, 50 gold, 20 per 40 horses, 25 40 50 gold, 300 bags of seeds, 5,000 silver, 50 gold, 150 long swords, 7,000 silver, 70 gold, 150 spears, 3,000 silver, 30 gold per studel, 3,000 silver, 30 gold per studel, 3,000 silver, 30 gold per studel, 3,000 silver, 10 gold. Valerie emerged from the bathhouse transformed. Her tangled hair had been washed and brushed to a silky sheen. Her hollow cheeks had been filled by a proper meal. And her eyes, those fierce, defiant eyes, were no longer hostile. They were curious, watching, waiting to see what this strange noble would do next. You didn't buy me as a pleasure slave. I nodded. You've been a pleasure slave before. Almost. Some other noble bought me, tried to. But I bid him hard. So he sold me back. I've been passed around ever since. No one wants a slave who fights. I don't want a slave, I want a soldier, and soldiers fight. She stared at me, trying to understand. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever given her a choice. Where are you taking me? The north, the hellish wastes. She almost laughed. You're insane. Everyone dies in the north. Every expedition, every army, they all die. I know. That's why I'm going. Why? Because everyone else is too afraid to try. And when you're the only one willing to do something impossible, you either fail spectacularly or succeed beyond anyone's imagination. The caravan assembled at the city gates as the morning sun began its slow climb upward. 1,000 slaves, 4 servants, a handful of specialists, and a noble who'd been given a death sentence disguised as an opportunity. Alina stood beside me, her face pale but determined. She'd been with me since childhood, and she'd never seen me like this, confident, commanding, utterly unafraid. My lord, how many of us will make it? I didn't answer immediately. I was looking at the customized map in my system. All of us. And anyone who dies, dies fighting for something worthwhile. That's more than most people get. Listen to me, all of you. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking I'm a fool, a dead man walking, leading you to your doom. And maybe you're right. Maybe we'll all die. But maybe, just maybe, we'll live. And if we live, we'll build something new, something better, something no one else has ever dared to build. I held up my hand. I'm not going to pretend that the journey is not dangerous. But I promise that if you follow my orders, you will be safe. Fight for me, work for me, and you'll be rewarded. And when the world looks at the north and sees only death, they'll see us, standing tall and unbroken. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some were inspired. Most were still terrified, but none of them were walking away. That's good enough for now. Fear and loyalty are the currencies of power in this world, and I have both. After my speech, the system update flashed in my face. Assets? This would give me time to train the men, create the purification lamps, and craft the magical potions which the system claimed would awaken the gifted or strengthen my soldiers by 4 times. As we traveled, I ordered James and Valerie to pick out 300 men and train them. The first day passed in relative quiet, the caravan moving along the main road toward the borderlands. At the end of that day, I sat alone in my tent, the 12 magical gemstones arranged before me like jewels on a merchant's table. The system interface flickered, displaying diagrams and instructions I'd never seen before. I selected a gem, placed my hand on it, and felt a surge of energy like static electricity, but warmer. The gem began to glow, and with careful precision, I guided the system's power into shaping it. It was exhausting work, draining my energy with each successful lamp. By the time I'd crafted the first purification lamp, my hands were shaking and my vision was blurry. But the lamp worked. I could feel the corruption in the air beginning to recede around me. This will help clear the fog. On the third day, we reached Silver City and rested in the forest on its outskirts. The area showed signs of the corruption, a few withered trees, twisted plants, and strange, glowing fungi that pulsed with an eerie light. I decided to test the purification lamps in the forest. I set 2 lamps at the ends of the camp before I went to bed. By the morning of the next day, the withered trees had received life. The twisted plants had completely vanished, and the strange glowing fungi was nowhere to be seen. The whole camp was amazed. By the 4th day, the gray fog had begun to close in, and the mood of the caravan had turned grim. By this time, I had crafted 8 purification lamps and 5 potions that helped awaken gifted people or strengthen soldiers. I did this with the help of the system. Before we crossed the boundaries of the northern waste, I spent the evenings studying my system ledger, tracking every expense, every asset, every variable. I'd spent 3,610 gold coins on the expedition so far. My remaining treasury was 1,590 gold coins. In a few weeks, the first monthly dividend would come due, and my investment would be doubled to 7,220 gold coins. It's not enough, not nearly enough, but it's a start, and a start is all I need. I called Valerie and James and gave each of them 1 bottle of the potion, promising it would make them stronger. After they drank it, they witnessed a transformation in their spirit and in their body. For Valerie, it was her spirit. She felt like a key had been broken and a door had been opened in her soul. Something ancient and powerful stirred within her, waiting to be unleashed. For James, it was his body. He felt immeasurable strength flow through his limbs, as if years of neglect and decay had been stripped away. His eyes burned with new fire. I told them to take time to practice alone and see what they could do. The next day, Valerie ran into my tent, excited and confused, startling me. I jumped up from my bed in panic, thinking there was an attack. After she explained what she was able to do, the ability to summon things out of nothing, I explained to her that she was a uniquely gifted being and that for her powers to grow, she must bind herself to someone. If not, she might go mad. After a few hours of training, she could summon big wolves, eagles, and bears. The training was exhausting for her, and we ended that day's session on the 5th day. I asked Valerie to come for personal training and told James to keep training the men. This time, I told Valerie to summon an eagle and let it fly, which she did easily. After that, I told her to try to see through the eagle's eyes. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and suddenly, she could see vast areas and land masses. She immediately told me she could see everywhere. I was glad because my plan was coming into place. I told her, now cast your gaze towards the fog and fly into it. At the same time, I opened my custom map and hoped this would work. Immediately, as the eagle flew into the fog, my map showed an updating notification on my system screen. After a few seconds, the map was updated and I could see the wastelands. I told Valerie to use the eagle to go a kilometer north, then half a kilometer east, then turn around and do a kilometer west. As she did, my map was updating. Now, I could see polluted rivers, broken down cities along the river that flows from east to west. Then I could see red dots, which signified hordes of undead, both animals and humans. After an hour and 30 minutes, we took a break to resume later in the evening. On the night of the 5th day, as the caravan camped in a shallow valley, the attack came. James was the first to notice something was wrong. He'd been with the posted sentries, his instincts honed by years of combat. When he saw movement in the shadows beyond the campfire's light, he knew immediately what it was. Attack, form up. Shields to the perimeter, he whispered. The camp exploded into organized chaos. Slaves turned soldiers grabbed shields, spears, spiked sticks, and swords, forming up with the others. It was not up to standard, but it would hold, and in the center of it all, I stood calm, my system ledger flickering with warnings threat level. Moderate asset risk, low sprint recommended action. Engage and liquidate. Valerie with me, James, hold the perimeter. Don't let them break through. The attackers were well equipped for assassins disguised as bandits, full leather armor, steel blades, and the disciplined movements of trained soldiers. They weren't amateurs, they were professionals. Assassins sent by my brother to finish the job, but I had expected them. Valerie, your bow, I need you to aim for the leader. She didn't question me. She grabbed her bow, aimed at the leader in front, and loosed an arrow in one fluid motion. It was a good shot. A clean shot, but Valerie's hands were trembling, her aim slightly off. It didn't matter. The arrow struck the leader in the chest and he went down hard. Another fluid shot, and this time Valerie decided that the arrowhead should erupt with bright blue light. This sent a shockwave through the enemy formation. Men screamed. Horses bolted. And in the chaos, my forces struck. Now, attack. Break them before they regroup. James led the charge, his sword flashing in the firelight. The slaves turned soldiers, transformed by fear into something more desperate, more dangerous. Followed behind him, their crude tools raised high. Valerie stood at my side, her eyes wide with shock. What was that? What did I do? You're unlocking new abilities. The gift that's been sleeping inside you is opening its eyes. I touched her head in an approving way. The battle was over in a matter of minutes. The assassins were no match for the desperation of a cornered force fighting for its life. By the time the last enemy fell, the camp was littered with bodies, and no enemies survived. I walked among the dead, searching the bodies with methodical precision. I found the leader, his hand still clutching his dagger. I ransacked his vest, and in the hidden pocket, I saw 700 gold coins. Just as the system predicted, I smiled and tucked the purse into my belt. Clean up the bodies. Burn them. Retrieve their horses, which amounted to 51. We leave at dawn. James approached, his face grim but his eyes burning with newfound respect. My lord, how did you know? I knew someone would try. My family doesn't want me to succeed. They want me to die. And I intend to disappoint them. I turned to address the survivors, my voice carrying across the camp. Listen to me, all of you. We just survived an assassination attempt. We just fought off trained killers, and we won. Not because we're stronger, not because we're better, but because we refused to lie down and die. I paused, letting the words sink in. I'm not a great general. I'm not going to pretend to be, but I'm going to win. And if you fight for me, you'll eat better than any free man in the empire. Your labor is your capital. Invest it wisely. A murmur rippled through the crowd, and for the first time, I saw something in their eyes that hadn't been there before. They're starting to believe. Good. Belief is the first currency of power. The system flickered before me of assets.